Give us a sense of what's going on in Massachusetts, what you're seeing, and what you're doing.
Well, a few things that we're seeing. One, you see people out there on the internet, Instagram, Facebook, they're marketing coronavirus vaccines, treatments. All of these are scams. And so in response, we go after them and quickly try to shut them down. We also see people who are setting up these charities where they pretend to be asking for support to support coronavirus victims. And again, they're scams. And so we're just encouraging the public to really do their homework before you ever give money like that to what you think is a charity. We've seen a lot of lately, a lot of people reaching out via phone call or on the internet, promising small businesses disaster relief and, pretending to help them with their application for that federal money, which people are so desperate for. And so we've been really clear with the public, only go through the public sites to apply for and obtain that relief. But it really runs the gamut. I mean, recently there was a woman named Suzanne, she called herself, who was calling around offering to help people with their student loans for a fee. So we're monitoring this. We're encouraging people to report these scams to our office, and we're taking action as we see it.
So do you have something like a hotline, Attorney General?
We do. In Massachusetts, we have a hotline set up. And we also have a way for people to file directly online or through social media with our office. So we've got those lines fully staffed up. We had to fight off unlawful debt collection, price gouging, that began a few weeks ago, and similarly for these types of scams.
If you discover these, what can you do about them? Your court system's closed down, isn't it? Can you take people into court?
Well, it really ranges. Some of this stuff is coming from overseas, so it's harder to chase. But, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of tracking down who owns the site, calling them, sending cease and desist letters. We've had success doing that. We also make sure that we warn the public immediately so that they're on the lookout for these kinds of unlawful solicitations.
Look forward to a more hopeful time. For example, when we get a treatment or we get a vaccine, how will we make sure that people can afford it? Because unfortunately, the wealthy have the first access to these things, and yet a lot of the people, as I said, who have been most badly affected have not been the wealthy at all in most communities.
No, it's so true. And not only are they having trouble accessing health care, I mean, our whole healthcare system is so strained right now. And you see the holes and the failings there. But, remember, a lot of these folks are frontline workers, but a lot of these folks, too, have been laid off. They've lost their jobs. And so we're going to need a whole safety net and a whole lot of funding to support them and to help them through this time. And so, this isn't a weeks or months-long endeavor. This really is going to take us, I think, years to recover from, to rebuild from. But, my hope is that we rebuild in ways that are more equitable, that deal with some of the underlying disparities that, result today in Black and Latino populations disproportionately being affected, sickened, and killed by the coronavirus. So we've got a lot of work to do, but with this devastation comes a lot of opportunity to rebuild in a more positive direction, I think.
Well, that's very hopeful on your part, and I hope that you're right, goodness knows. At the same time, you mentioned the healthcare workers. There are some reports, some places, that perhaps people have been hoarding some of the personal protective equipment, things like gowns and masks and gloves. Is there a way for you to discover that and go after it? Is there any legal recourse?
Well, there is, and some states have actually issued orders that prohibit that kind of stockpiling. We, through our office, have, encouraged the public to make donations to turn over what they have for PPE that is so desperately needed right now in our hospitals and on the front lines. And we're also encouraging the public to donate. We've had a lot of just companies that happen to have PPE. These weren't even necessarily healthcare companies who are donating that. We've also seen in Massachusetts a really wonderful effort by many of our manufacturing companies who, may have been making athletic apparel, but now are turning around and making masks or making gowns. And, every little bit helps right now in this time.
Yeah, we heard your governor, Charlie Baker, just yesterday identify some of those athletic companies who are really donating things. Turn to a different issue because up in Massachusetts, again, your governor, Charlie Baker, announced this tracking and tracing pattern with Partners in Health, really to try to isolate and identify the people who have the virus and might spread the virus. Does that raise issues for you in terms of privacy? Because we now see Amazon and Google, for example, are saying they're going to have an app up that will tell us who we've been in contact with. Do we have to consider that balance, or is this a bad enough crisis we say, look, we need to worry about saving people's lives. We'll get to the privacy later on.
Well, I think it is a matter of public health right now. That is the priority. That said, there is a way to do it to account for people's privacy. I think you need strong, this has to be government-led so that the right protections are made in place. But certainly whatever we can harness from the private sector, we should be looking to harness. And the fact of the matter is we're not going to see the economy open, as many people are clamoring for, until and unless we have measures in place to do that contact tracing, to test to see who has the antibody, and may be able to return to work to see who's had the virus, right, and who's come out of it. And ultimately, we do need to get to a vaccine. So I think people need to be patient. It's a terrible situation, I know, for everybody. But the fact of the matter is, until and unless we have these measures in place, we're not going to be able to open things back up. And we've got to get that right, and we've got to put public health as the priority ahead of everything.
And a final area, Attorney General Healey, if I may, is I mentioned before the court system. I'm not sure what's going on with the court system in Massachusetts, but you have a big office that has a lot of business and a lot of work to do without a coronavirus. What happens to all that work when we have this crisis pending? Can you do both at the same time, or do you have to suspend a fair amount of what was going on just so you can focus on the issues surrounding this crisis?
Well, it's a good point, but fortunately we have been doing both. Our office went virtual weeks ago, so everybody's been able to work safely from home. They're preparing briefs and filing briefs in court. The courts, while not operating the way they used to in terms of not allowing people in and out, are nevertheless taking electronic filings. They're having telephonic hearings and video conference hearings. So that work continues. I certainly have set up within the office a COVID response team, and we have many people across the office working on this. We have our healthcare folks working, our consumer folks working. In the early days, they issued regulations to end debt collection and price gouging. We've had to work on other economic issues like working with the utilities to stop shutoffs in people's home of their utilities, working to make sure that workers are protected. Our Fair Labor Division is active, fighting for workers for paid sick leave and the time they need to care for themselves and their families, but also that they're working, whether it's in a grocery store or an Amazon distribution center, with the right kind of PPE, equipment to protect themselves. So it's been a full-out effort from my office, but I think you see the scope and the breadth of our Attorney General's office and what it's capable of. But we've also kept all our hotlines open, and the work continues. It's just done in a different way. We've certainly learned a lot about the fact that we're able to work and accomplish a lot through video conferencing and telephone conferencing and the like. But we found a way to continue.